Okay. Good evening again. I'm Amy Schwartz. I'm the Director of Education in the studio here at the museum. I'd like to welcome you to the latest edition of our Meet the Artist lecture series. Tonight, I'm very pleased to introduce a special guest, Fritz Dreisbach. 2012 marks the 50th anniversary of the studio glass movement, and our lecture this evening is titled, Where Were You in '62? Fritz was there at the start of it all, and tonight he will share his recollections of the beginnings of American studio glass. Fritz was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1941. In 1962, he earned a Bachelor of Art degree from Hiram College. In 1963, a Master of Art in Teaching degree from Oberlin College, a Master of Art in 1965 from the University of Iowa, and a Master of Fine Art degree in 1967 from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. That's a lot of degrees. In Madison, he was assistant to Harvey Littleton. From 1967 to 1970, Fritz taught at the Toledo Museum of Art and the University of Toledo. From 1969 to 71, he served on the board of directors and chaired the publications committee for the National Council on Education and Ceramic Arts. Fritz was one of the founders of the Glass Art Society in 1971, and he served as its president from 76 to 78 and again from 82 to 84. And then in 2002, he received the Society's highest honor, the Lifetime Achievement Award, for his unique and significant contributions to the world of glass. Hailed as the Johnny Appleseed of glass, Fritz has presented hundreds of lectures, classes, and workshops on glass in more than 130 institutions in North America, Europe, and Asia. He is also a distinguished artist in glass, whose work can be found in numerous public and private collections. And in 1993, this museum awarded him the annual Rakow Commission. So to share his recollections about the early years of studio glass in America, please welcome artist, educator, and inspiration, Fritz Dreisbach.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Is it rolling, Bob? Don't you guys remember that? I'm giving away some of my favorite music from the 60s. Normally it bothers me when speakers read, but I have something that I've spent some time and energy putting it together as concisely as I can. I kind of like to read this to you. And the title is How It Really Started, My Anecdotal Account of the Early Years of the Contemporary Studio Glass. In the beginning, showmanship was a very, very important aspect of contemporary American glassblowing. Still has that flavor. I dislike the term movement, even though it truly was a movement with an exponential growth spurt. The project at hand from 1963 onwards was to push, sell, inspire, and promote the concept that molten hot, gooey, viscous glass was a legitimate medium for artists to work with. Clay, bronze, fabric, gold, stone, paint, wood, and other art media were already accepted in the world, and we wanted to add glass to that grouping. Our united passion was the basis for developing my Johnny Appleseed career, spreading gospel of glass everywhere. It definitely motivated Lipovsky to investigate and cultivate the world's glass sites for 40-plus years. It also inspired Chihuly to create both Pilchuck and his monumental glass kingdom. The list of passionate artists goes on and on. My apologies to the 187 other really important pioneers of our glass scene, which we don't have room here to properly acknowledge tonight. My Rakow commemorative pokal that Amy so nicely described the commission, was from 1992, and it was to celebrate the 30th anniversary, and we'll have that in the slides in a minute here. And what we're celebrating is not that artists all of a sudden started doing something that they hadn't been doing before, but that the artists got together, a few of them got together and helped each other figure out how to work with glass in a small furnace, in a small environment that was more like what they were used to than a great big noisy, dirty glass factory. So my lecture is titled Where Were You in '62, and it's illustrated with many photographs of the key events surrounding the birth of contemporary glassblowing in American art. While viewing my who, what, where, and when of the '60s, see how many folks with dark hair, or even with hair, you can recognize. So that's that. So what we're celebrating is that workshop in March of '62, it's something we can kind of put our finger on and say, okay, that's when it started. And, you know, of course, things were happening. There were people working with glass, but they weren't pushing glass. They weren't promoting glass the way it happened after those '62 workshops. It's curious that the people who attended the workshops, the attendees, only 3 of the people there went on to work with glass for many years after that. A few of them did glass for a couple of years and then went back to whatever they were doing, which was mostly clay. Most of the people were ceramic friends. They were friends of Harvey Littleton from the ceramic world. Okay, let's get something going here now. Let's try this. Tom McLaughlin was my first teacher, and this is Tom right here. And this is the furnace that they blew glass in that very first March workshop. This is the furnace here also. This is Harvey Littleton. And this man is Harvey Leafgreen, right here and again right here. And you notice that he's very dressed up in a suit and tie, which is not the normal costume for a glassblower. And it's because he hadn't come there to blow glass, but rather to meet the people and listen to the lecture that morning. And then when everybody found out that he was a real glassblower, they brought him out to the studio and said, let's see your stuff. This is also Littleton, and this is Leafgreen again, the old retired glassblower from Libby. And this is Norm Schulman, and Norm was the potter at the Toledo Museum who, when Otto Whitman decided to allow Harvey to teach this class, Otto said to Norm, you have to make this happen, even if you don't think it'll work. Oh, there's the pokal. So the reason that I think that the pokal got made for celebrating the 30th anniversary, see the 3 X's, the Roman numeral 30, is that 20 years earlier than that, I made this 10th anniversary cup, and the Toledo Museum bought it sort of out from under the, well, of course, it's all about Toledo, so it was logical that they would buy it. But then Corning wanted one too, you see. And so they asked me if I would do a ceremonial cup specifically dealing with the 30th anniversary of those 62 workshops. And there it is being put in the pedestal. Most of you remember that the museum used to have a circle around the center spot. The center was the library, and then there was a circle around, and there were 10 plinths with covers on them. And you could you could see the 10 significant pieces of glass in the world, and then get in your car and drive on if you didn't want. But if you were interested in, let's say, one of them, you could turn left and go into another room, and there would be more pieces along that line, and then you could stay all day. And then behind that were the stacks, or the study area. And once you got in the study area, you had to get a motel. That was it. Well, I was totally blown away because I didn't know this was going to happen. My piece was in the 10th one. So here was like the world of glass, and it ended. Oh, gosh. It was, what did I do, go backwards? Yeah, you'll have to help me, please. Okay, so we've talked about Toledo and Corning, and that's the museum. I don't know if it's legal to show that sign in Corning. They took them all down. It's interesting. They don't have those signs up anymore. I kind of like them, the little state flag. Okay, so these are the 3 people that made that workshop, those 2 workshops. They made the workshops successful. They made it work. Leaf Green, as I described to you before, was a retired glassblower from Libby. Labino was, I didn't talk to you about yet, was the research, the head of research at Johns Manville Fiberglass Company. He was also vice president, and had a very strong interest in art, and did many artistic things. He did some painting and enameling and a little bit of ceramics and some photography. But boy, once he started blowing glass, he really took off, and that's a major thing. We'll see some of his work. And then Harvey Littleton, the guy that is the kingpin that puts it all together. By the way, if any of you have not yet purchased your book about Harvey, this is it. This is the story. This is the real story. Joan Bird wrote this book over 14 years of research, and she really got it right. And I'm very happy that we have that document now to tell these stories. Let's see, where do I point this? There's Leaf Green. Harvey, later, after I got to the Toledo Museum and I started teaching classes there, Leaf Green would come down to work. Come down to watch us work. And I always tried to get him to blow glass. And he'd say, "Oh, no, I didn't come to blow glass. I only came to watch." And I noticed he carried a brown paper bag under his arm. I didn't think too much about it. I figured it was his lunch. And every time he would come, and this would happen week after week, I'd ask him. He'd say no. And finally I thought, well, I've got to trick him. So I said, "Harvey, I have some problem. One of my students wants to see something." I forget what it was, handles or something. "Could you show us how to do it the right way?" "Yeah, sure." Out comes the paper bag. You know what was in it? Jacks, tweezers, and scissors. His glass blowing tools, and he had them every single time he came down to the museum, every time. But, I didn't come to blow glass. I only came to watch. Then June, they did the same idea again, only they expanded it, and it grew quite a bit. And they invited other people. This is a flame worker from Greenfield Village up in Detroit. Here he is again. And this is the only person that will be in Toledo that was at the workshop. Edith Franklin is her name, and she is a potter, and she was a part of that first class, and we've lost a lot of the others, unfortunately. Harvey's still alive. He's just not able to travel. So these guys were a big inspiration to me. These are the 3 people that I trace my influences back to. Littleton, Labino, and Eisch. Now, Eisch is from Germany, and we'll talk about all three of them a little bit here. So Harvey, as I said, was a potter. He was a ceramic artist who wanted to do glass, and he was born in what city? Corning, New York, right. See, I can ask that question, but I don't get so many good answers as in any other place. But I'm going to sort of milk it for all I can get. So, yeah, his father was Dr. Jesse T. Littleton, one of the famous scientists that worked with Sullivan here at the Corning Glassworks, and did a lot of research and is well known in the glass science world. But Harvey wanted to do glass, and finally, after this 62 workshop, it was proven to everyone that it could be done, and so he did do that. And he started the first glass blowing class was in Madison, Wisconsin, where he was teaching ceramics. He added glass into the program, and that's why we say that. Let's see. Let's go back here one second. We say that there's the studio that. See, I got buttonitis here. This is the glass studio at school at Madison. That's where I studied, and many of the other guys, almost everybody. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people went through that program. I don't know, 50, 100 maybe. Anyway, it started something. What Harvey wanted to start was that he wanted people to teach glass. So when we were there learning how to blow glass, we were being prepared or being set up so that we could then go out and spread the gospel all over the countryside. And these are some real early pieces that, these are mostly pieces you wouldn't have seen in all likelihood, although a couple of them are in the book. But these were the things that he was making while I was working with him, helping him. Now, Nick grew up in the glass industry. He was not trained as an artist. Harvey had his MFA degree in ceramics and was teaching in the art world. So Harvey was connected to the art world and to the academic world. This is important. Nick, on the other hand, was connected with the industrial world and with the science world. And so, you know, it's one of those beautiful marriages where when you get the right people together, really cool stuff can happen. And so, Nick, look at this piece right here. Whoops, wrong button again. Look at this piece right here. You see, that's like an illustration of the molecular structure of the silicon dioxide doodah, whatever it is. Anyhow, Nick knew what it was. If he'd come down from that annealing oven up in the sky, we could ask him. But anyway, here's Nick and his wife, Libby, and look at all these beautiful machines in the background. He had all this great stuff. Now, his furnace, the Labino furnace, was so important because it allowed us to blow glass anywhere, almost any place. Some people even built portable units. You'll see some. People built furnaces in their backyards, in their basements, in their garages, all over the place. It was fantastic. He also showed us how to make these annealing ovens and the controlling device for those annealing ovens. So his contributions to the big glass picture are gigantic, and they're very important. He was a curious guy, and one of his favorite, I guess his favorite title for himself was inventor. He liked to be called the inventor. And he did invent a bunch of stuff. You can't see it very easily here, but you see that little black raisin right there and right there in Nick's hand? And that's an electric motor. And the cool thing is it's really small because somebody said that they had made the smallest electric motor in the world, and they said it was the size of a walnut. And so Nick made one that's just, you could see how big it is, or how big it isn't. I mean, look at it, it's tiny. It's like the size of a fly. A raisin, it's a raisin. Yeah, he did that when he was in high school, or first year of college or something. And he also did a bunch of research with core vessels, ancient glass pieces that the originals were from the second millennium BC. And he made this glass harmonica. You know what an harmonica is? Spelled with an A, not an H. It's a musical instrument invented by Ben Franklin, exactly. And the Boston Museum had one, and they wanted to put it on view for the bicentennial. But some of the bells were broken. And so they contacted Nick and asked him if he could make, G and F sharp. and he did. He made them. And then he decided that he did all that work, he better make one for himself. And he and his wife, Libby, would often play it when you go visit them. It was really cool. But the thing I love about Nick, and I always remember about Nick, is his colors. He had these fantastic colors with glass. Just fantastic. And these are, on the right are cast pieces. On the left is a blown piece. Eisch was trained as a sculptor and painter in Munich, Germany. His family owned and operated a glass factory in Bavaria, in Frauenau, Germany, right against the Czech border. And so Erwin was one of the people that inspired Harvey to know that this was something that an artist could do on their own. Now, Eisch was lucky enough to have at his disposal a complete factory. So he didn't inspire Harvey from that end. But so that's why you needed to have Labino in the mix, in the equation. But Erwin worked for the factory as their designer. His brother, one of his brothers was in charge of the money, the comptroller. Another brother was in charge of the shipping and receiving, and a sister was in charge of the gift shop, and so on. They all spread the responsibilities. And Erwin, because he had the degree in art, he was the designer. But he made these beautiful sculptures. This is a life-size figure mirrored on the inside. It's a very large piece for this time period. It's the kind of piece that would look great in your brand new sculpture facility here. And it's mirrored on the inside, so when you look at it, you see yourself. And the name is Narcissus. So in the early 70s, and in the 60s for sure, there weren't very many collectors, magazines, authors, and so on. But that will change, you'll see, as the slides go on. Now, important events that helped the spurt: the public and private art schools. Art schools, see, that was, I suspect, I'm almost certain that Harvey had it in his brain that the way to get something like this going is beyond what he could do himself, was to get it into the schools. Because then you start disseminating to a huge audience. And so the schools became, well, they were, for us, they were like the Medici, back a long time ago, when they supported the arts. The schools really did support the arts. There were a few exhibitions. We'll see a couple funny photographs. And then the national and regional art conferences were extremely important because it allowed the artists to get together and share. And that sharing also promoted the glass. So the very first one that I know about was the World Craft Council meeting in New York City in 1964. And this is actually Erwin Eisch here blowing glass. And that's little Labino furnace that Littleton and Lepofsky brought down. Nick donated it to the cause to promote glass. And then this furnace went up to Haystack, a little summer school up in Maine, after the World Craft Council meeting. But at this meeting, European artists and designers and craftsmen saw what these crazy Americans were doing, and they were blown away. Sebring Falkema called this the little furnace. And that was the secret. He said as soon as he saw the little furnace, he knew he could have glass. And he went right home to the Rietveld Academy in Amsterdam, and they set it up and they started doing glass. And so I think of, and I always say that Sebring was sort of the Harvey Littleton of Europe, although Eisch was equally important. But you see, Falkema was in school. He was a professor. So his contact with so many people went way beyond just the casual or the few numbers of people that would see Erwin working or think about Erwin working. Okay, so schools. So 62 was the workshop in Toledo. In the fall of 62, there was a class started at Madison, Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. It was what do you call those classes that are, they're not really on the books yet, but it's independent study. Yeah, that's it. It was like an independent study. So that was really the very first time that glass was in an art department. Not in the chemistry department. Of course, chemistry people had it long before that. And so that's what we say. 62, 63 was Madison, Wisconsin. And then 64, the very first one was Iowa City, and that's where Tom McLaughlin went to teach. And I was an accidental student in that class. By accident, I mean the fact that I was in that class was an accident. I was there to study painting. I went to Iowa to study painting. That's what my MA degree is in painting. And, well, that's another story. We'll get there. In the summer of 64 was Iowa City. But that fall, Marvin Lepofsky, who had just graduated from Madison, went to University of California at Berkeley and started the glass thing there. Which he's very proud of the fact that he had 6 gals in the class, and he and those gals built the entire studio. They built the furnaces and the annealers and the benches and everything. And there they are working in the Cal lab. 66, Ohio University. San Jose was also 64 because Bob Fritz was in the workshop in Madison. So this is the tree. This is the family tree. It's spreading out and it's exploding. We already talked about Haystack, and Penland was just another one of those summer schools. Remember I told you there was portable glass shop. This is Brian Lonsway. Unfortunately, Brian's with Nick Labino up in the big annealer. And this was a poster that Brian made. I love it. Look at this. No glass is genuine without this signature. You don't think we were arrogant, do you? This glass thing wouldn't have gotten started if we were all shy. I'll guarantee you it wouldn't have gotten started. So Brian built he was my student at the museum, at the Toledo Museum, and he wanted more blowing time, and I said, you're going to have to build your own shop. It's the only way to do it, because you just can't get into this class. There are too many other people using the facility. So he decided that if he was going to build a shop, he'd put it on a trailer so he could take it to craft fairs, demonstrate, and sell lots of glass. It partially worked. But he said the most fun he ever had was blowing glass in a parade down Monroe Street in front of the Toledo Museum of Art. And you see how, oops, button, oh, wrong button. Do you see how the trailer is organized behind his 32 Chevrolet, and he used the same tires and everything? The furnace faces backwards off the back of the trailer, and the bench is way up here. So he would walk at parade speed, 2.5 miles an hour, while he's reheating. But then, when he had to reheat it, when he had to neck it in, he would run around and jump up on the bench and neck it in. And then when it was time to reheat, he'd jump down, and as it went by, he'd go back in and reheat. I wish I could have been there to see that. This studio up here in the corner was a friend of his, Bud Botley, and he didn't have very much room in his garage, so he chainsawed a hole in the garage and then put the furnace on a track, like a railroad track, so he could roll it out in the backyard on a nice day and blow glass. And this guy, Gary Dutton, built the cheapest glass studio in the world in Chico, California. He was a student, and he was living in student housing. And he scrounged all these. Look, that's red bricks. Those aren't insulating bricks. But so what? This is that freedom of being able to do anything and not worry about it, not think about it. That's what made this glass thing take off in America faster than you can even imagine. But that's not the reason. That's not the only reason it was the cheapest glass studio. He tapped into the university gas line with a potato. And Dixie Daniels built this very funky North Georgia mountain glass shop. And these places, they all work. They look a little rusty in the photographs because I came by. They didn't happen to be hot at the time, but no, these were working studios. But then in 1969, we built the most expensive glass studio in the world at that time at the Toledo Museum of Art. And it was about $250,000 glass shop. And these are my students all dressed up in suits for the opening. So I did mention that exhibition. There were a few exhibitions. One of them was very important. In 1966, the Toledo Museum decided to look at what they had birthed. They wanted to see it, what results had happened. And so they held a competitive exhibition for all of America for any artist that wanted to send in glass. And they had 48 people. It's only 4 years. 4.5, if you're counting. There were already probably over 50 people blowing glass in the United States. And they selected 43 of those entries, of those people, I mean. These are some of the prize winners. They're not much to look at today's standards, but that one's mine. That was my first purchase, first public purchase. And then 2 years later, 68, they did it again, and these are some of the pieces. And now the pieces are getting a little bit better. Those earlier pieces, I always described them as lumps of glass with real pretty lighting. But now the pieces are getting a little bigger and a little bit more impressive. These two are Joel Myers, and this is Marvin Lepofsky. Those are some of the prize winners and some beautiful pieces. This one's called Bottle Boogie. I've always loved that piece and still do. And I love this series that Marvin did. I like that piece very much also. Then in 80, they decided there were too many glassblowers. Can't have that. We can't open it up to anybody that wants to submit to the competition. So, or maybe, I don't know. I'm making this up, I guess. I don't know. For some reason, in 1970, they decided to have 10 little tiny shows all in one great big giant hall. So each artist had a little area. You can get the feeling for these are all Joel's pieces, and they were all displayed right together like that. This is Dr. Zarkov's tower. That's a very, very impressive piece. Dale had been working with the neon. That's pre-patch. You don't see too many of those photos. And Dick Marquis had these beautiful little cups. He had just come back from Murano, where he had learned how to make stuff. And he had a piece. Do you know what that is? Do you guys know? The Lord's Prayer. He sent me one in an envelope when I was teaching at RISD. And right after he made it, he just put it in an envelope. Didn't say anything, just put it in an envelope and sent it. It was, just this tiny little. So I get the envelope, I open it up, and there's this little thing. What the hell is that? Oh my God, it must be the Lord's Prayer. Because that the Lord's Prayer on the head of a pin. And so I took it to the biology department up at Brown University and put it in a microscope so I could read it. Pretty cool. And these are some of mine. Fantasy vehicles and fantasy objects. Now in 71, there were a number of very important things that happened in 71. One was this incredible exhibition that Dale and Jamie, Jamie's not in the picture here, but Dale and Jamie made these beautiful, tall, all white show. It was a show of all white glass. And some of the pieces had neon inside them so that they were charged so they would glow. But the entire room in the Museum of Contemporary Crafts in New York City, the entire room was blacked out with black vinyl, floor, ceiling, and walls. Oh, it was spectacular. And no light, except the glowing of the ones that had neon in them. That piece has neon in it. These ones that are photographing a little bit on the yellow side, those are not, they do not have light inside. So it was, oh boy, I was blown away. This is how he packed it. They rented a big truck to drive it from Providence down to New York City. They rented a big truck, and they just treated the truck like a shipping carton. And they just taped these pieces, these giant pieces of glass in there. And they were so tall, of course, there were no annealing ovens that were that big. So when they put them in the oven, they only put the big fat part in the annealing oven, and then these tubes were all sticking out, just going every which way. And there's Jamie and Dale blowing those things. Actually, they're fuming right there, but we don't talk about that. Okay, here we are. Now, major exhibitions. So Toledo, as I've said, really helped spark this thing, get it going. But their interest or their support waned with time. And thank goodness that the Corning Museum was right here to pick up the slack, even before Toledo realized that they were slacking. This is the way the museum looked when I first arrived. That's one of my slides from whenever that was, 66, I think. But they did many shows here. They had shows of European glass work, which was very important for me because I could get to Corning, but it was difficult to get to Europe. So I didn't travel as much as I do now. And in 1979, they had this show called New Glass, But we all had the nickname of Glass 79. In fact, there's even a song. Billy Bernstein, famous North Carolina glass artist, wrote a fabulous song about blowing glass and adding sand and soda and lime and letting it fine. And at any rate, we all called it Glass 79. And the refrain of the song is, I hope I don't get juried out of Glass 79. Fine and 79. Okay. Workshops. I love doing workshops, and it's totally my favorite thing to do. And you can see how popular my lectures are. This was a workshop in New Orleans, of course. New Orleans. During Mardi Gras, I told them that I would love to come down, but the only time I could probably do it would be Mardi Gras time, because I wanted to go to Mardi Gras. And I made that Mardi Gras float, which had filigree and doodah and bit work and all these things, so the students get a flavor of what I'm doing, but I'm also reacting and responding to their environment. Do you know what I mean? Here's the Great California Glass Symposiums were they were the leader of all of the workshops all over the country. They were a giant inspiration to us all. And they were put on by Marvin Lepofsky all through the 70s and most of the 80s as well. And let's see. So it's Lepofsky, this is Chihuly, Ruth Tamura, me, it's my younger brother, Mark Pizer. He doesn't have any hair then either. But, and this is Joel Myers, and Paula Bartron. Cool, huh? So I did the last blow in Berkeley, and we made this California camper with a peace sign on the back end of it. And this was a drawing I did, with the students. I do these workshops. Whenever I do workshops, I work with the students. Some of the guys, when they come to do a demo, they bring their crew. They have their guys, and they don't even have to say anything. They just nod like that, and boom, there's the jacks ready for them. And they'll kind of look like that, and the door opens up. But I like to work with the people that are there, and they then get to know a little bit better about me. So I used this drawing, you see, to describe how we were going to build the truck. It's sort of like hand building a clay object. Now, it goes on and on. In 1970, Toledo wanted to celebrate their new studio. And so they got Harvey Littleton and Dominick Labino to come back to Toledo, and they got Harvey Leafgreen to show up also. So he's really getting old now in this shot. And also CBS was there with their cameras. And we made this poster to celebrate that. And if any of you go to Toledo, we're going to have these posters. We did a reprint, updated. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I haven't seen them yet, but I know they're going to be. And then also, in addition to working in the Toledo studio, we went out to Nick's. And there were probably 15 students involved in that workshop. So, and they came from all over the country, all over the world. Not all over the world, all over the country. And we made stuff, and I helped Nick. Normally, Nick blew everything alone, solo, which is what we all did in the very earliest years. But now almost everybody works with helpers. And in fact, I've had students that won't even get out of bed if their helper isn't there. It's sad. It's sad. How do you deal with that? You don't let them get away with it, do you? No, good. Anyhow, we knew how to work alone, but Nick thought, I guess, we'd make this 3-part goblet. And I was honored that he asked me to help him. And so I kept one bubble while he was doing the other bubble, and so on and so on. And then after it came out of the annealing oven, he gave it to me. I was honored, and I took it home, and I don't know if you remember, but the imagery that's on this poster then ends up on his goblet. And then I gave it to him. After I engraved it, I gave it to him. And that's really my very first ceremonial piece. That predates the 72 goblet that I made that's now in the Toledo Museum. But the mother of all workshops was this one where we pulled off in North Carolina. This was so much fun. We brought in something like 20 of the guys, and we just blew glass. We had furnaces going all the time, and we had batches, and we had beer, and we had brats and everything. It was fantastic. And this is Yvonne Streetman. I want you guys to meet her. She's a fantastic photographer, and she's the one that made that poster of me and also did the photo for the Berkeley blow. But she's a true artist, and was really fun having her there. And we got some great shots because we had a professional there. And this is Bill Boyson. There's Tom McLaughlin. Again. This is Bill Brown back there. It's hard to see them. They're pretty old photos now. This is Billy Bernstein and Dudley Giberson working together. And Michael Taylor, many of you know, from Rochester. And this is Ruth Tamora, and this is Audrey Handler blowing glass up over her head. And that's the flyer that we made to advertise it. And we did it again. We got a little grant from the American Crafts Council to start up a new craft organization, a media organization. And I put half of it in the bank so we'd have money for next year. And then we did gas too. And the thing that happened at Gas 2 that is really significant is that we did get together and talk about issues, and we'd made a decision to incorporate and to get to apply for a 501c3 rating from the IRS so that we could get grants and get support. We had seen how this works with the clay people with NSECA, as Amy did some sleuthing to find out that I was a part of NSECA for a while. And that's where I learned about how these organizations operate and how we could then apply that to the glass guys, and it helped a lot. There's the first board. It's Marvin Leposky, Joel Myers, my younger brother, Jack Schmidt, and Tom Kekik, who's no longer with us. He's in the annealer also. And the little Henri Toulouse-Lautrec Hallam, who we elected as being our first president because you see his mouth? See how it's open? His mouth runs like a whippoorwill's butt in mulberry season. He's all the time talking. We thought, oh, he's the guy where he's the front guy. He's the one point person we need out there. And so one of the things we didn't like about being in North Carolina for those conferences, those first 2 conferences, they were too small. We couldn't invite everybody. We couldn't just open it up and let anybody that wanted to come. And so one of the things we did when we were sitting around those tables, another thing that we thought of doing was, let's go someplace where it's big enough that we can have everybody. And Henry, bless him, found that we could possibly go to Fenton Art Glass Factory in Williamstown, West Virginia, and he went down there and smooth-talked Frank Fenton into allowing us to come, and it was fantastic. It was just fantastic. And now, from that point on, Gas has always and welcomed anyone with an interest in glass. Even my mother was a member for a while. Okay, some other stuff that happened in, well, I already told you about Chihuly Carpenter, but Earth Day happened in 71, some other stuff, lots of other stuff. 71 was a special year, but June of 71, Dale Chihuly and Ruth Tamora started the Pilchuck Glass School. That's the way it looked in 71. That's the way it looked 25 years later. Pretty darn cool. It rains a lot, so everything had to be under tents or some kind of protection. See this house? Oh, everybody, in the beginning, everybody had to make their own house. You had to provide your own living. The Bob Arneson piece, the clay soda pop bottle with a cap on it, but it's made out of ceramics, and the cap, of course, is sealed on there. And the title for the piece is No Deposit, No Return. And Chihuly's poster for Pilchuck, #1, said, no deposit, lots of returns. And the idea was that the people that came there had to do a lot on their own. They had to bring their own equipment and so on to live, and the school would have furnaces, but that they had to build them and so on. So it was kind of a Woodstocky craft, Woodstock for the crafts, which is kind of cool. Oh, Magic Dick. Okay, so everybody had to. So Magic Dick and Leroy, these two guys came, and they were going to camp out together. Most of the people did joint adventures so that they didn't have to do all the work. And these guys showed up with a parachute. Now, you know, a parachute is pretty small, but it makes a big. So they bent over 8 twigs, put the parachute on, and they were at home. 5 minutes. Magic Dick and Leroy. It was like a magic mushroom in the woods. And it just kept growing and growing. Lark Dalton called me up in 1973 when I was teaching at Pilchuck, and he said, Fritz, go down to the Alaska Airlines freight department. There's a box for you. Well, I knew he was fishing in Alaska, so I pretty well figured out what was going to be in that box. And so I drove down there and got this, and it was the biggest king salmon that had been caught off that part of Alaska, that upper part, that summer. It's like 85 pounds dressed. And it was frozen hard as a rock, of course, so that it would get there and be fresh. So we thought, let's cast it in glass. So it was so hard, you know. I mean, we made a sand bed and pushed this frozen fish into the sand bed, pulled it out, and then poured ladle after ladle of molten glass into the cavity that was left from the fish, and then put that in the annealer, and a week later took it out, and we gave the glass fish to Lark. But we ate this one after it thawed out. I cooked it with 2 dozen lemons and onions, barbecued. There's more shots of Pilchuck. This was a fun piece. It's in imitation of many of the big stumps that are out there at Pilchuck. You can see one of them right here with a chainsaw buried in it. My students and I made this. and some other vehicle things that I used to make. This one's in a cardboard box in Corning. I don't know where those others are. Oh, I have this one still. I don't know why I liked vehicles. Brent Kington was a big inspiration for me in the 70s. He's a blacksmith and silversmith. But this is what's in the cardboard box. It's the whole farm. Corning bought the farm. But they never put it out. Well, once. Goblets. I love goblets. I dreamed of making something like those Italian 17th, 18th century Italian glasses. When I first started working with glass, I'd see them photographs in books, and but I could not even fathom how they could be made. And it wasn't until my 50th birthday, Dante Marioni and Janusz Pozniak helped me make these cups. These and these. And I was so happy. I was so excited. We're going to skip that. These are the bigger pieces I've been making, vases and so on. This is what I want to get to. So remember I told you about this cup with the diamond engraving that I made for Nick. That got me thinking about this whole idea of decorating the glass after it comes out of the annealing oven. And I thought it would be really cool to learn how to do it. And I was looking at petroglyphs like these from around, this is from Alberta. These are from Hawaii, and these are from Arizona, southern Arizona. You can see. And people are not totally sure what the significance of them, but we think it was some kind of communication or statement of religious stuff and so on. Maybe, I don't know. It's probably white people trying to figure out what natives were doing. And so I wanted to do more, and I took a class with Jurgi Hartziba and did classic Bavarian, my heritage, German, engraving. And prior to that, before I started blowing glass, while I was studying painting, I also did engraving and worked with Mauricio Lazansky at Iowa. And then these are some more of the drawings of posters and flyers that I've done. So I've had this ongoing interest in writing and decorating on the glass. This is actually making the pokal here. We made 7 of them because I thought I'd probably break a few of them along the way. I didn't, but I was ready if I had. I attended, at the invitation of Hartziba, I attended an engraving symposium in Kamenetsky Shenov here. You see the school. And that's me on the wheel. And I started doing this idea of working back and forth between the hot glass and the cold glass. So and this is what we're going to do in February. Amy and I are talking about it now. So I made I made these logs. They're overlays of a very dark color over clear. And then you cut through the color and see, it's something that there are tons of them across the way in the museum. Wait a minute, they're right over there somewhere. But then I picked them back up after I did the cutting and worked them hot again. It's hard to see what's going on, but Trust me. There, you can see it's back on a punny after it's cut. Boy, is it easy to polish. Polishing glass is a little bit laborious sometimes, but you stick it on a punny and put it back in a glory hole, and zippo, you're all set to go. So I started doing the most recent work I have of mine to show you tonight are these carved and cut pieces where I first made the glass, mixed up the powders and figured out the colors and so on, melted the glass, blew the pieces, the objects, as blanks, and then cut them. So it's a long process. But it allowed me to do things that were really fun for me now. And this is the newest. You know, crystal, there's something about crystal, too. It keeps coming back to me. And even cut crystal has a beauty to it. I mean, you can't see it in this photograph, but somewhere there, it'll just, all of a sudden, there'll be a rainbow of colors. Just, and then you just change the angle. You move yourself a little bit, or move the piece a little bit, and that rainbow jumps way over here. It's really amazing. And you don't get those with the colored stuff, but what you do get with color, I'm a sucker for color. I've always loved color. I'm always working with color. And this particular color, I named this one Naples Blue. And it's a combination of coloring agents that when it's thick, it looks like a cobalt blue. And when you thin it out, when you grind down to where it's very thin, it looks like a copper blue, which is a greenish blue. So it goes from a purpley blue to a greenish blue, depending on the wall thickness. Well, it's not really the end. That's it. You're a great audience. Thank you. Thank you. I think
That was great. I think we're pretty much out of time, but how about just one or two questions if anyone has any?
Are you going to do another commemorative album?
I didn't make it for the 50, but I might. I'm actually researching it right now, but I haven't done it. I'd like to. It's sort of would make sense, wouldn't it? 10, 30, 50. Yeah. Thanks. I know it'll be a lot of cutting if I do.
Any chance you could do the rest of that story about how you landed in Tom Glocker's class?
Oh, God, that's a great one. Can I tell it? Do we have 2 more minutes? 2? 3? Yeah, better have 3. Okay. I'm studying painting at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. My painting professor is one of the senior faculty members, and all the senior faculty at Iowa leave for the summers. All summers, every summer, they go away. And the school brings in young hot dogs to teach the classes because A, the young hot dogs don't know how hot and miserably humid it is in Iowa City, and B, they need it on their resumes. So it's an experience that they want. My painting professor found out who the young hot dog was coming in to teach in painting, and he said to me, "You can't take that class. I don't want you in that class. I don't want you to even come in this building. In fact, I'd prefer if you stay on the other side of the Iowa River." Now, on the other side of the river were all the 3D classes, and I thought, well, it's probably a good idea to take a bunch of 3D classes because I wanted to be a teacher. That's why my parents were teachers, and there was a lot of teachers in my background, and I thought, okay, that's logical to have a variety of being able to teach a variety of classes. So we're filling this thing out, and he says, okay, now you need 2 more credits. And if you don't have a full load, they'll take your assistantship away from you. So I had to find a class that was 2 credits. You guessed it. And he said, here's one that's 2 credits. And I said, what is it? And he said, it doesn't matter. It's 2 credits. I swear. So I took it. And it was Introduction to Glass Blowing. And it was the 2nd class in the United States of America. And that was Tom McLaughlin, who had been at the workshop in '62, and he was my teacher. I didn't know all this yet. And he had been blowing glass 8 hours longer than me when I walked in the door. And you know what the studio looked like? It was an empty room in a Quonset hut that they used for sculpture during the school year. But we got to use it for glass that summer and the next 2 summers. It was an empty room, except there was a pile of bricks on the left corner, and there was a 1-inch gas pipe that came up with a cap on it. That was the studio. We had to build everything, and that took weeks. And now it's time to go.
I think it's time to stop. Thanks for coming, everyone, and thanks to Fritz. Good job.
Thank you.